Hello, so now it's March 23rd, 2026. I'm going to finish the Harriet Tubman story. Okay, part 2. Okay, 2 years after leaving her husband, Tubman went back to bring him north. When she got there, she found out he had remarried. He did not want anything to do with her. He did not want to go back with her. So she had taken some enslaved people and helped them come back with her. In 1857, Tubman buys a home in Auburn, New York. Her home is now a museum, as you can see. Let's see, you can see that is some of the pictures of the museum. It's now called the Harriet Tubman National Historical Park. You can see there's the actual house. I don't know, I keep seeing this picture here. I don't know what that is. It might be like, I don't know, their storage or maybe their barn. I don't know. That right there probably had her carriage in there. It's the entrance to the place. She bought this house with the help of, who was it, Seward? Who was the Secretary of State by the time, she was looking to buy a house. Because Tubman had no money, he helped her. I guess he bought it for her and then just gave it to her. And all she had to do was pay a little bit of money every month to stay there. Now, she had helped, well, never mind, hold on. Okay, when people found out that this person who was helping slaves escape was the person they called Moses, that was being referred to as Moses, slave owners and pro-slavery people, when they found out this same person was Harriet Tubman, they made wanted posters of her. I couldn't find any pictures of the wanted posters with her on them. That would have been neat to see. But yeah, they put wanted posters. I think the reward was up to $40,000 in some areas, which is a whole heck of a lot of money even now. But that was a whole heck of a lot of money back then. In 1857, okay, I don't get this part. She found out that her father was arrested for trying to help a slave escape. Now, let me see. The thing was, he was going to be tried. Okay, yep, her father had been arrested for trying to help a slave escape. Her father's name was Ben. He would have been severely punished if found guilty, which most likely he would have because he was black. Black people were just assumed guilty. Still to this day. So she went to help him escape. The thing was, it says here in this book, she arrived in Bucktown, where her father lived. Without any advance notice, she slipped into the cabin of her astonished parents. She told them to prepare for a trip. But I was thinking, if he was arrested, why would he still be at the house? I don't know. I'm wondering if maybe part of this story is wrong or just made up from whole cloth. But anyway, she did help them escape. She had to steal a horse because her parents were in their 70s at the time, and they just couldn't do what she was used to assisting younger slaves escape. But, they couldn't do the stuff. They couldn't walk the distance. They couldn't walk as fast. So she had to steal a horse from a neighboring farm to help them escape. Says something about, getting an axle, fitting boards over to make like a crude, not carriage, but a crude, I don't know, conveyance for them to use. She ended up selling the horse and sent them the balance of the proceeds after they were done using it. Okay, so let me see. 1860 was Tubman's final rescue. Let me see. I don't know if there was anybody important or if this was when she went down the river, which is an interesting story. Because it's only, oh, that's right, because it was only a few months prior to the Civil War, there was much more social uprising, there was much more policing effort on the streets, more vigilance. And so that had to be put to a halt. All the all the conductors, all the station masters, they were on high alert at the time. So at least at the beginning of the Civil War, all that had to stop. Not saying slaves didn't try to escape, because of course they did. Of course they would. Who wouldn't want to escape that? But you just didn't have the organized network that predominantly white people at the time. Tubman made a total of 19 trips to the South, freeing nearly 300 slaves, according to this book. I've heard other sources says she helped up to 1,000 enslaved people escape. I think that's very high. I think that number is too high considering the time, the era. And this was all pre-automobile. It took a long time for people to get anywhere. So I don't even think that she would have the time in her life to do all that traveling north and south to free, considering they were having to walk and use at best horses, which usually they weren't able to use horses. Tubman was in Canada when the Civil War broke out in 1861. I told you about that. The Underground Railroad had to come to a halt at that time. Tubman thought Lincoln wasn't doing enough to free the slaves. So she did some, advocating and talked to some people to try to maybe get politicians to urge him to change his mind. In 1862, Tubman arrived in Beaufort to help with treating escaped slaves. During the Civil War, escaped slaves, what happened? There was I think the Union had burnt down some nearby city, and the slaves had run to Beaufort, and Hilton Head to escape. And so there they were, and they were half starved. They had nowhere to go, uneducated. None of them had any money. So Tubman was sent there. I don't know who ordered her there. I don't remember that part. But she was ordered there to Beaufort, to help treat enslaved people, communicate with them, set their mind at ease, see what their needs were. Because Tubman being black would probably be more trusted than if a white person was trying to help the enslaved people, or formerly enslaved people. She had many roles at this time, including nurse to the soldiers and escaped slaves. She helped nurse white soldiers there. 1863, Tubman was assigned to join a general on a steamboat up South Carolina River to free enslaved people. And in this book, it was talking about how it was kind of like if modern day equivalents would be Katrina, when the ships and rowboats and whatever helicopters went to help rescue the people that were basically drowning. They were on top of the roof, or they were floating on, doors and stuff. Basically the same thing happened. She'd row down the river. The people that were on the side that were working in the fields, they'd come up to see what was going on. I guess she'd yell them over and they'd swim over or most likely they didn't know how to swim, so she'd stop and, you know, go over to the side and, you know, help them on board. And then when they got full, they'd go back, or steamboat back up the river and drop them off on free territory. They said they had people, once the steamboat got full to capacity, there were people that were afraid she wasn't going to be coming back, and so they would grab onto the sides of the steamboat, you know, and, you know, they were afraid of them either pulling it down with the weight, or possibly drowning, because they couldn't possibly make it all the way back up the river without having to let go. So there was some turmoil there. Like I said, it was just like Katrina. You saw how helpless some people were and desperate they were, that they did some very dangerous stuff to try to get saved. 1862 to 1865, Harriet worked for the Union in various capacities. 1869, Tubman married her second husband, Nelson Davis. Now, this was illegal, recognized by the government. Her first marriage was not, because she was enslaved. But this marriage was legally recognized. Her first husband had died a couple years earlier. Nelson Davis had contracted, he was a soldier in the Army, had been a soldier in the Army, and he had contracted tuberculosis. So he was always sickly the whole time he was with Tubman. And most of her marriage, she spent nursing him because of the side effects of the tuberculosis. He died in 1888, so what was that, 19 years they were married before he died? Now here's the thing, in 1913, Tubman died in a nursing home. Now the thing is, Tubman had this home, like I said, she had this home that Seward helped her buy, and across the street from where she lived, there was a lot going up, or I'm sorry, a lot, property with two houses on it that were going up for auction. Well, she didn't really have the money for the auction, but she bid on the auction, and she won. I think they said it was $1,400 that she won the property. So she was raising money to help pay for this, and she was going to default because she just didn't have the money. So she donated the property to the AME Church, the African Methodist Church, I believe it was, and with the express intent that they would build, they would use the houses and maybe build more buildings to help the poor, the sick, the needy, whatever. And what ended up happening, I think at first they were doing that, but then they were starting to require the residents pay to be there. And Tubman was like, what's the point? If they have to have money to be there, that's not helping the needy. If they have to pay to be there, that's not helping the needy. So anyways, I think that what happened when she was pregnant, I think about 91, she made a deal with them that she could stay there and be basically in the nursing home part of it, and they would take care of her until her death. And she did die there, and they said she had a lot of visitors, which is good. And so that was the story of her, and I hope you learned something. And let me show you the Thompson Memorial for the African Methodist Episcopal. This was, I think they rebuilt it. This is an old picture of it, and it says in 1913. So I think, let's see. Yeah, that's when Harriet Tubman dies. Thompson, let's see, I don't see, I think this is kind of a current picture of that part of the front of the building. I don't see a current picture of it. Okay, anyways, I guess this is it, but it's not a very good picture. So anyways, they do have various things named after Harriet Tubman, and If you know of a place or you visited such a place, put it in the comments. I hope you learned something.